been here a while, you know, we had the last 3 or 4 years, had good reprieve, didn't have a lot of snow, but we're still in Northern Illinois. So it's come back with a vengeance, and don't think that it won't go like this until March. I always say spring doesn't arrive until after Easter.
Yes.
You can
You know,
have,
we'll get
you
hit,
can have
but
15 inches of snow on Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been
Yeah.
around, you've experienced that.
I'm an April baby, and I've hit a few piñata parties in snow. So
All right, everybody, we're going to call the meeting to order pursuant to the Illinois Attorney General Guidance to Public Bodies on the Open Meetings Act during the COVID-19 pandemic, dated July 2nd, 2020. County board members may participate without being physically present in compliance with the established provisions. I call the February 16th Strategic Planning Committee meeting to order at 11:30 a.m. Can we please get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Covert.
Here.
Vice Chair DeCiani.
here.
Member Hart.
Here.
Member LaPlante.
here.
Member Rutledge.
Here.
And Member Tornatore.
Here.
All right, all present.
All right. Thank you, Kay.
You're welcome.
All right. So we do not have a physical quorum in the room. A physical quorum of the members is not present. However, pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, members are permitted to attend remotely. Either one member of the committee, the chief administrative officer, or our chief legal counsel are physically present at the regular meeting location. In-person attendance and public comments are allowed, subject to attendance limitations required to ensure the health and safety of those who attend. I want to welcome our guest panelists today, our moderators and our committee members and others who have joined us from the Complete Count Committee. I also want to say hello and welcome to all the viewers there on YouTube as we are live streaming. Thank you for attending this important meeting today, important topic. I want to welcome the Hanover Park Village Clerk, Ada Corral Sepulveda, Lyle Trustee Sarah Sadat, Alderman at Large Sherman Jenkins, Oakbrook Village Board Trustee Asif Youssef, who are all here today. I want to really express how grateful I am for your hard work, your dedication to the community, and how you've done so much work for our community, and I appreciate it. And I want to mention also that it was very difficult to find you guys. It was, when I was planning this meeting, it was very difficult to find diverse elected officials serving in nonpartisan roles in DuPage County. So you guys are truly gems. I wanted to use the word unicorns, but you guys are truly gems. It is very difficult to find diverse elected officials in DuPage County. So thank you so much for being here and agreeing to speak on this really important topic that we have today. I also want to thank our moderators today, Hanover Park Village Trustee Sharmeen Shahjahan. Thank you so much for being here and all the experience that you have with diversity and inclusion and this specific topic. I also want to welcome moderator Rima Kamran, who is from the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, but also our own Complete Count Committee member. So thank you so much for being here. I will let you two introduce yourselves more and go into a little bit more detail about the purpose of our meeting today and how it's going to go. I also want to go over ground rules. Today is a very sensitive topic, and sometimes it's a difficult topic for people to discuss. But over here at the county board with me, it doesn't have to be difficult. So I want to just set out some ground rules and let you know that the purpose of the meeting today is to start a dialogue of a sensitive topic and to explore what challenges diverse elected officials face once they are in office. how they overcome those challenges, what challenges do they face, and we want to come together for solutions today. We want to make this a productive meeting. We want to talk about solutions. How can we encourage others? How could we shed light on what diverse elected officials go through once they are in office? I do want to clarify for the record that this is not a political event. So any discussion of elections or electioneering, future elections, obviously is prohibited, and all our guest panelists already know that, as they are esteemed elected officials, very knowledgeable. But I wanted to let everybody know in the public that any electioneering or talk of elections is prohibited on federal grounds, government buildings. So please be careful of that. This meeting today is a continuation of our race relations series that we started on strategic planning. The race relations series I started last year after we passed the diversity inclusion imperative. So basically the race relations series explores diverse communities and groups of people, and we figure out ways on what their needs are and how to serve the community better. So, so please be respectful and courteous, and I'm sure you will all be. And having said that, we will first vote on the approval of minutes and then move on to the discussion portion of our meeting.
Madam Chairwoman, before I make the motion to approve minutes, which I would like to do, I just want to thank you for this collection and collaboration of really good people from all different backgrounds. I think it's great, and kudos to you for putting this together. With that, I make a motion to approve minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Member DeCiani. All right, we have a motion to approve the Strategic Planning Committee meeting from Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Do I have a second? Second by Member Hart. And do we have any questions, discussions, amendments, deletions, additions? Okay. All right. Hearing none, seeing none. We need a roll call on this.
We do.
Yes, we do. Let's get a roll call.
All right. A vote to approve the minutes from January 19th. Member DeCiani?
Aye.
Member Hart? Member LaPlante?
Aye.
Member Rutledge?
Aye.
Member Tornatore?
Aye.
And Chair Covert?
Aye.
Aye. All ayes.
All right, that passes. All right, moving into the discussion portion, diversity, inclusion, and the road to racial equity in DuPage County, governing through systemic bias. Thank you again to our moderators, Sharmeen Shahjahan and Rima Kamran. Please introduce yourselves, and I will let you take it away from here. Thank you.
Guess I'll start. So I'm Sharmeen Shahjahan. I'm the village trustee for Hanover Park. And just a little bit background about myself before we begin. I've worked actually with our village clerk, Ada Goodall Sepulveda, since 2010 with our cultural diversity and inclusion committee. And we've done some great work through that. We've developed some demographic and policy series, for example, that was adopted. Some of those things were adopted by our school district, our library, Elgin Community College, So we can go into that a little bit later, but I wanted to, make that point. And a couple other things, in terms of the background is, I've also, over the last 3 years as an elected official, became a part of the National League of Cities Race Equity and Leadership Council, which is National League of Cities is a council across the country, that they formed this committee in response to Ferguson, just to make sure that we as cities have come together and we can kind of create a framework for how we have these conversations, but more importantly, how do we create systemic change within our institutions so that we are serving the public in the most inclusive and fair way, and that is our role as elected officials, is to serve our public, serve the public. So with that, I wanted to, maybe what we can do is introduce Rima, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about what does systemic bias mean before we begin. You know, and before I end, I wanted to just really quickly thank, you know, DuPage County Board for your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It requires not just commitment, but investment in dollars to, you know, train our, all of us. We're all in different phases in terms of where we are, you know, in understanding what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. So I really want to thank all of you. Living in DuPage County, it means a lot, you know, to have this leadership kind of be, take on this role. Rima, do you want to start? And then I'll.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rima Kamran. I am a co-founder of the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition. I'm a proud resident of DuPage County, and I've been proud to work with many of you side by side this past year as we work together to get out the count and get out the vote. The Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition is proud to be here with you and excited to be working with Chairperson Sadia Covert and as recipients of the Healing Illinois grant to talk about inequity in our communities. We've come together here to talk about building towards racial equity practices for leaders in all spaces in DuPage County. The Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition is a partnership of activists, influencers, and change makers, as well as organizations. And our mission is simple. It's to convene and collaborate and amplify civic efforts towards civic justice for vulnerable and marginalized communities. Our focus is civic work towards achieving civic justice, and our work is endless. I encourage you to visit our website to learn more. It's ilmuslimciviccoalition.org. As a part of the Healing Illinois grant, we have been organizing and facilitating discussions on racial equity along with the DuPage Federation, NAACP, as well as the DuPage County Board. And our goal is to educate organization and address structural racism towards achieving together racial equity practices for our county as a whole. This will strengthen our collective analysis of power while providing useful tools and a framework to shift power within our groups, institutions, and other formations seeking together to advance racial justice for our county as a whole. And as we start together today, as Sharmeen mentioned, we'll start off with defining what systemic racism could start with. So Sharmeen, I'll give it back to you to start us off with what does systemic bias while governing even mean?
Yeah, so the main thing, you know, I'm kind of mentioning this as I jotted it down, but basically inherent tendency of a process to support a particular outcome. So basically, it doesn't necessarily mean you might even recognize that it's happening, but basically, for example, hiring practices. If you're going to different, if you're not going to different colleges or universities, you're going to the same one. You're going to have those same types of individuals that are going to come into your organization rather than expanding your pool of hiring candidates. It doesn't mean that you're reducing the quality of your candidates. It just means that when you're expanding, you're trying to and offer that same opportunity to others when you are kind of combating systemic bias. So that's just one example that I'm kind of putting in there. Governing through systemic bias, we've had a huge history, where we've had for example, slavery, Japanese internment, some of these other major things that we all remember, but, there's, we're still learning from, all of the historical consequences of that, and not too long ago, we're still recovering from redlining, for example. So those are some examples of systemic things that could be within our communities that we need to, work towards addressing. Within the government facility, one of the things, for example, is, fines and fees, just making sure, the way we have our ordinances placed doesn't inadvertently impact one community over another. So anyway, that's, maybe I should have been a little bit more concise with that. Yeah, so that's, I'll leave it at that. And one thing I think we should probably move on to next is introducing our panelists and then kind of maybe giving them an opportunity to kind of explain how, how they've governed through systemic bias and what challenges, they may have come across. With that, maybe we can ask our panelists to one by one introduce themselves.
Charmaine, could I interrupt from the
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to have a special mention, recognition of one of the panelists here who, so Trustee Sarah Sadat is here today despite having a house fire yesterday. So she still managed to make it in person. And I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for being here. If we could have the, if she's here today. So I told her she didn't have to be here, but she thinks it's very important to be here. And Sarah, thank you so much. Even though her house was on fire yesterday morning, right? Yesterday morning. I'm so sorry. I'm glad that everybody's safe. And I hope that, all goes well with the insurance company and, you could recover whatever there's. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but we really appreciate you being here today. So go ahead, Charmaine. We'll start with the introductions. If we want to start with Sarah first, and then.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to, as Charmaine mentioned, our goal here is to start talking through, we're trying to have a constructive discussion about exploring how structural racism as well negatively impacts DuPage County, especially for marginalized communities. So what we're going to ask each of the panelists to do is to just start with their name as well as their official title, and then we have a set of questions and we'll go into the discussion. So Sarah Sadat, if you could please start.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, board members, for having me. I really, I'm grateful to be addressing all of you today. As I wear the ashes on my shoes because I did not have time to go and get any clothes, but I do know that this conversation is something that we need to continue to have in order to find solutions and find positive outcomes. If I may have a moment to kind of read one of the emails that actually prompted this discussion. This email was addressed to us not too long ago. We talk about we talk about how history seems to repeat itself, right? But this just came in January, and I'm an honored trustee of Lyle for the past 2 years. And one of the emails that I received from a constituent was addressed to all the board members, and it speaks directly to the racial bias and the use of dehumanizing racial slurs by a counterpart that we have. But the problem wasn't the fact that these racial slurs were used, because it was irrelevant. And she quotes, there is no excuse for the shown racial bias, but the type of shown bias / behavior should not be tolerated by a government official for any reason. This matter should be addressed. With her email, I can feel her anger, and I can feel her upset. And this is what actually we all deal with on a regular basis. On my side, when I'm reading this, as a person who's of color, who is working collaboratively with a board and trying to find a way to govern moving forward, these are the issues that we seem to be facing. Nobody addressed the solutions. Nobody was coming up with any tangible evidence to move forward. So the reason to move forward with this and the reason to have this conversation is to come out of it with some possible tasks, some possible touch points that we can all address and walk away with. Some kind of a toolkit that we can all hang on to and say, this is how we're going to address any issues or any concerns that come up. One of the things that I'm very grateful for out there in Lyle is a group called Unity Partnership. We bring together people who are marginalized, people who are who look like me, who are like me, and we work with our police department and our police force to bridge that racial gap. So that is a solution that I think we can definitely go ahead and address and explore. But this is a great opportunity for us to talk through this with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I, Sherman Jenkins?
Good morning, everyone. I am Sherman Jenkins. I serve as Alderman at Large here in the city of Aurora. And I also am the chairman of the board of the Kauai County African American Chamber of Commerce. I've lived in this area for well over 30 years. I worked for the city of Aurora and the Economic Development Department, starting out as the assistant director and eventually moved into being the executive director until I retired from the city of Aurora in 2012. I see a good colleague of mine on the call, Mr. Brian Caputo, who we worked hand in hand and trying to make things happen in economic development in the city. I think with regards to this topic, I want to thank the committee for asking me to be on. And I think one of the things that we all have to look at with regards to this issue is that it comes from the heart. And if individuals can look within their heart and understand that we are all are human beings, and not to look at someone as though they are an enemy, that they are less than human. When you get to that part, that's when a lot of this happens. And as much as things that we try to do in terms of having people to move beyond, they have to look within their heart. And there are things that have occurred throughout this area for many, many decades that people can tell you stories left and right. But I think one of the things that we have to do is we've got to look at the policies that we put in place. And then the interesting thing that was said this morning, starting us off, our committee chairwoman said she had a difficult time finding diverse speakers. And we have to, even though the thing that was the critical thing she said was she kept at it. She worked until she got that. And so we must get beyond, hey, they're not out there, I couldn't find them. No, you have to give all the effort that you can in terms of making diversity paramount within the county. And so I think from the standpoint of what we have in this area, in Aurora being in 4 counties, King, Kendall, DuPage, and Will being the second largest city in the state, there's a lot that we can be able to show our area that we can look at diversity and make it paramount and make it something that we are going to get beyond. And so again, I just want to say to everyone is that it begins in the heart. It begins understanding that we all are human, that no one is less than someone else. And if you can do that, I think we can be able to continue to move forward in terms of making this area a better place for all.
Thank you so much. Asif Yusuf.
Yes, good morning. My name is Asif Yusuf. I'm a trustee in the village of Oak Brook where I live. I'm currently on my 4th term. I also serve as village president pro tem. In addition, I'm on the county stormwater committee where I served with Sadia for a couple of years. And I'm on the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference Legislative Affairs Committee. This is an important goal, and we need to set the example and we need to set the policies to ensure that people are treated equally, whether it's interaction with them, whether it is employment opportunities, whether it's participation on our committees. We're a very diverse community, and I believe our makeup over there reflects that diversity. We've worked hard at it, and we have tried to select the best people for each role, not excluding nor favoring any particular group. So it's an ongoing struggle, and we keep at it. And it's a worthy goal. It's a very worthy goal.
Thank you so much, Asif. Aida Corel Sepulveda.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Ada Corral Sepulveda.
Thank you.
No worries. I am the village clerk for Hanover Park, and most recently I was elected as commissioner for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, which is a Cook County wide agency that deals with stormwater management and sewage as well. So I wanted to really speak to highlight, if you
Ada, you're muted.
yes. Where did I mute?
Highlight.
Okay. Highlight, and throughout my journey, you know, what I've seen being raised in the suburbs when it comes to this topic. I think we go into a stage of acknowledging diversity based on demographics, right? We see people, they're different people. We try to understand their culture. We want to understand the music, the food, and all of that. But I think it's really critical to move beyond that and really engage in a conversation that acknowledges a history within our country, that acknowledges bias, within us, all of us, no matter what race or religion we are a part of, we have bias, and that's just, created based on your environment and how you grew up and preconceived notions that you form. And the important thing with that is to constantly challenge yourself and reflect on what those biases are. That is something that I myself, as a Latina millennial, constantly have to do in multiple layers. And finally, I think it's important that we all recognize our privilege, and our privilege not as an absence of personal challenges and struggles, because sometimes people were like, well, I don't have privilege. I had to work for what I had, right? But it's not saying that. It's more of looking at the systemic challenges that are set forward, whether it's, and I'll note just a couple of examples, whether it's, for example, in our municipality, there's been challenges with something as simple as holiday lights. If you don't take down your lights, we issue tickets. Makes sense, right? Take off your lights, guys. Otherwise it looks kind of like you're just not caring about what's up in your house. Well, unfortunately, that has created some challenges for people that follow faiths in different calendar times. If you are putting up your lights at different times because you celebrate a different religion that doesn't follow the Christian calendar, that's a point of privilege where systemically you have a challenge that someone else doesn't have. And there are various examples of that. The other part of it is, as we move forward, to me, it's most meaningful to create brave space, to have these conversations. The fun exploring differences and cultures, that's cool, it's great. But at the elected, at the government, even at the leadership and corporate, we need to move beyond just trying to understand the cultural diversity and really being intentional about how we engage with inclusion and giving space to voices. I can't tell you how many times I have expressed my journey, not only just as my own, but also what I've seen through others, my neighbors, the people that I shop with, the people that, I walk my kids to school with, and I've had to validate it to people in leadership. And that can be very, very demoralizing, if you will. So creating that brave space where people can have honest conversations is very important.
Thank you so much. We were talking about, the challenges. What are the personal challenges, as people of color who are in this role, to you and to your community, to your families, to you as personally?
And I would just add to that, when you do respond, sometimes those personal challenges are, there's a theme across it. So if you do see that, it is a common thing amongst others within your community that are facing it, and how we can, as a governing body, can maybe acknowledge or address it. I think that would be good for us to learn from.
I think could jump in at this point, whoever wants to answer the question first. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Personal experience, I think, all kind of stem from one location. It's the not understanding, right? So we were talking about Christmas lights that have turned into now Ramadan lights that follow a different cycle. But personally, it's the fact that my family and us, we kind of go through this not understanding of what it is that we're doing as government officials, or what it is that our views are. Then it kind of bridges into more of a trust issue, right? So it's those kinds of call outs, it's those kind of conversations that keep coming back to identify what it is that makes you who you are, and then governing on top of that, and making sure that whatever it is, whatever policy that you're making is able to be applied to the rest of your community that you're serving. There have been numerous buzzwords, if you want to call them that, around hijacking, around being called a terrorist, about who it is that you are. But you know what? None of that at the end of the day actually matters to the family and to what it is that I serve on, because I know that I have multiple other people that look like me, that are represented by me, and who want to see the change. So this has been I've served as a trustee for the past 2 years for Lyle, and from the very beginning till now, it's been one of these trust issues. We don't know her, we don't know what she stands for. So the more that we come out of our comfort zone and we start addressing people, they try to understand, oh, she comes from a different faith, or she comes from a different background, and that's the reason why she's doing this.
You could raise your hands if you want me to call on you, or panelists, you could jump in.
Yeah, panelists, if you'd like to add on, please please feel free to jump in, or I'm happy to call on Mr. Jenkins or Asif, Mr. Yusuf.
Mr. Jenkins, I believe you were raising your hand.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll jump in here.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, with the trust, I was just curious what others were thinking about. How do you build trust once you've gotten into government? But that, we can ask that later.
I'll try to touch on that as in terms of some of from the original question. And I think one of the things that we have to look at, and I can take it from the standpoint of serving as an alderman at large here in the city of Aurora, but also before that as economic development director. One of the things that we fought in economic development was trying to get development to occur throughout the city. And we had areas where we couldn't, it was very difficult to get developers to look at areas where there was a large minority population, like our east side of Aurora. One particular thing, and it still kind of occurs now, we're fighting, is that you can drive through certain parts of the new east side of Aurora, and as you're driving, you're on a telephone, the call drops. And we fought with various carriers trying to get them to understand that they need to have more towers. And what we would get is, oh, well, the return on the investment is not there. And that's full of hogwash, because that people of color use cell phones just like anybody else. And so, yes, and you're constantly, you show where there is a return on your investment, and that the number of people who have the phones and use them, and they're in their own areas, and you're still not getting adequate service. The other aspect has to do with when you look at development occurring, you have a situation where you can't get basic services like, hey, can you get a nice tablecloth restaurant? Can you get a chain restaurant or a store in a specific area? And you get this, well, when we look at the numbers, the household incomes are not there. Okay, well, you're talking about systemic racism. When you look at decades of how we look at the household incomes between Blacks, whites, Hispanics, it's all documented. And so when people say, well, they don't have the household incomes, well, wait a minute, but they still eat. They still like restaurants. They still like cleaners. They still like, and then you say, well, why don't they go and get their own? Well, if you go to a bank and the bank turns them down, they can't get the access to capital. It's a cycle. And we used to fight having to show that there's money that can be made here, but it all goes back to what happened decades before. And so as we go forward, we have to work with our banking institutions, our developers, our companies to say, look, you got to go the extra mile. Just like you tell a person of color, they would tell you, well, you got to work extra hard in order to achieve. Well, you have to work extra hard to make sure that you address and serve all the people, not just where you think I'm going to make money, or where I had a situation where I was working with trying to get a specific bank in our area to locate in the Near East Side, and sitting in a private meeting, the person said, well, you know, those people don't use checking accounts. Excuse me? But they bank with you and you lend their money out, but not in their area. So, you know, I said before at the beginning, it starts with the heart. And you have to look at people, as individuals. They want to live. They want the betterment for their children and all. So, you know, and then the trust has to come where you have to be willing to open up. And it's not just a one-way street. Let's make sure that we have our boards, our organizations, that when your board is all white and you don't see a problem with that, and please don't come with this, I can't find them. That's where it starts. That's where it begins at the foundation level of our communities, to make all of us to say, look, the change comes within, and we have to make that happen.
Yeah, I think, you know, to Mr. Jenkins, or Alderman Jenkins, my apologies, point, to say that you can't find them is not good enough. I think and one of the things that you have to do is really, that's a point of bias, and acknowledging bias and how you recognize leadership. When I was elected, I was the first Latina elected to the board in Hanover Park. And it wasn't enough for me to just have representation. I felt that it was very important to have representation. We're a very diverse community. We're a majority minority community. Latino community is a plurality. Our Asian communities are very large, and our Black community is very significant as well. And so for me, it was important to have leadership that represented all of these diverse communities. But the way that I see leadership, you know, I've called it non-traditional, but it's more, perhaps I should change my wording and trying to like say that it removes some of those bias of what you expect a leader to look like. And actually the leaders that we've brought forward are very well prepared. and they have high quality experience. But you're able to make those connections and assert to them why it's important and why their perspective is valuable. The Latino Policy Forum is an organization that I really value. And when I first started, they talked about having the Latino perspective in the American agenda. And that was very meaningful to me because I can't represent the Latino voice at large, and I can't represent the minority community at large. But the fact that I could bring my perspective and be a voice for that and push for that in the future was very important. One of the challenges that I have faced, and I haven't quite been able to overcome, quite frankly, is when there are issues of diversity and inclusion, and they're really very meaningful issues, that are of topics that not everyone is ready to explore, such as, immigration and how our local units of government deal with ICE and how that disproportionately impacts in a negative and biased way a certain specific sector of the community. Or when we talk about the very real and tangible issues of police brutality across the country, and not to paint all police officers with a bad brush. Those issues then sometimes get caught up in controversy, if you will, and it becomes a politicization of our existence, and sometimes then it devolves into an undermining of the individual. It becomes about, oh, well, Ada is just, she has her agenda. This person has their agenda, and that devaluing is dangerous because you're not only devaluing my humanity and my experience and my perspective that I was elected to bring to the table. You're also saying that the experiences of all the individuals that I have, come across that are sharing this is insignificant. And that's when you start really engaging that systemic bias that we need to acknowledge, not only as people of color, because we sometimes play into it as people of color. Oh yeah, you know what? She's just on her soapbox. But you as a white ally should also have a responsibility to acknowledge that bias, should also have responsibilities to step forward and check your fellow elected officials and say, hey, you know what? This is an issue that impacts this individual board member, and the way that they are speaking to it, it impacts their community at large. So it's incumbent upon us to listen, at the very least, listen with respect, and try to really come to an understanding of what are the policy issues behind that problem and come up with solutions. Because this isn't going to just magically go away. We're only going to get more diverse. Statistically speaking, the trends are there for DuPage County, the trends are there for the country. This is only going to get more diverse, and the way that we can continue to grow as a community is by figuring out how to manage across these differences in a productive way, in an intentional way.
Thank you. Trustee Youssef, did you want to add to that, or we can move forward to an additional question?
We can move forward at this point. I think it's been pretty thoroughly covered, and I agree with a great deal of what's been said.
Okay. Charmaine?
You're on mute.
Oh.
Sorry, I was pulling up the question. So the next question, and I was referencing it a little bit, when Sarah was speaking. How do you build trust, collaboration with your colleagues and with the larger community that you serve?
One of the major things that I've been honored to kind of bring to the table was the different communities to have a grassroots movement, to just have that acknowledgement of, hey, this bias exists, this is what we're facing, and to have that open discussion and that dialogue. So working from people in Chicago, like Tio Hardiman, Andrew, a whole bunch of other people, and then bringing that here to the DuPage County area to kind of see what works or what doesn't work. What works in the Chicago area is to have the perpetrators that are actually doing the crime, the police officials, as well as the victims come together, have a meaningful dialogue, and have a meaningful conversation. What was missing was the governing portion of this, right? It was a policy making portion to kind of add, hey, we're hearing you, we're listening to you. And now how do we take that to the next level and make meaningful policies and rules that not just address the systemic racism? Because again, I'm going to continue to say this, history continues to repeat itself, right? Things that are happening right now have continuously happened in the past. We are just here laying the groundwork and the framework for the next people that will come after us, that will take these leadership roles. So having those conversations is what continues to build that trust, to have somebody listen to you and address it, and then turn around and make that policy that says, it's okay to have your, again, I'm gonna continue to go back to the lights thing, because it really does resonate with me to the core of my being by saying, we can allow lights to happen at any given point in time. When you are sitting on a nonpartisan elected position, your culture, your religion, your background are the things that define you, and those are your community's policies that are governing you. So for you to have other people that look like you, that speak like you, giving you that information, again, at that grassroots level where they can come together with our police force, with our with other outreach partners and activists, and help you form that policy making, really, really does go a long way to building that trust.
Other members of the panel, would you like to comment on, you've given us a lot to think about in terms of the challenges. Would you like to comment on how do colleagues within your space, how do you build trust, and how do you collaborate with your colleagues as well as the larger community that you serve towards facing those challenges?
Well, if I could add that one of the things I try to do, and I've tried to do throughout my time here in Aurora, is working with different organizations. I heard someone brought up regarding Unity Partnership. Excellent organization being involved in working with our police departments throughout the western suburbs, and also working with my colleagues on various organizations. Like we have one here called African American Men of Unity that really works with young people to help some of them who have grown up fatherless to be a father to them. You know, I think in terms of, I'd like to try to talk to some of my colleagues in terms of coming to different events and have an opportunity to interact with people that they typically do not interact with. And that helps to garner an understanding because you get an opportunity to sit and talk with someone that you typically don't, may not have any exposure to. And it helps. And it goes both ways. I've always been someone who's been involved throughout the community, going into various events and working. At a time, I used to be on 15 different boards, and I always wondered how I was able to do it, but I did it. But it helped to expand my horizon. And I like to say to my colleagues, that's the way that you can be able to be open, and a number of them are involved with their wards in terms of working with their constituents. But it goes beyond that in terms of understanding, having a situation where you get to know of a person and what their views are, and not always go with the intent to listen,
more than to speak, so that you can be able to understand where someone is coming from. That's how I work.
Thank you so much, Alderman. Trustee Asif, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes, I think you have to be out there very proactively, talking to different people in the community, getting their feedback, because there may be policies that you see that seem reasonable and right in place, but you don't know the impact of those policies. It may fall disproportionately. Again, the thing with the lights is a clear example. Now that ought to be a no-brainer, and it ought to be an easy fix. Whether you have diverse representation in government or not, they ought to respond to that. But there are all kinds of things, and you have to be out there, and you have to show that you really do care, not about your own ethnic community, but about everybody, and you have to fix things. And to do that, you have to develop a good working relationship with your colleagues, because the fact is, we have 6 people plus a village president on our board. It takes 4 to make a change happen. So I can have all the ideas in the world, but unless I develop those relationships where I can effectively communicate and get support for some of those changes, nothing's going to get done. So you gotta be out there dealing with the public very proactively, and you have to go out of your way to really establish the lines of communication with your colleagues and the working relationships. It's not just showing up to the meetings and casting your votes. You have to have serious discussions about problems that you've identified, and give your colleagues the opportunity to be part of crafting a solution with you. Give them some ownership of it, and then you make change happen.
So that was a good transition. I think a piece of what we wanted to talk about also is some of the successes that we may have had in our own spaces in terms of building coalition and addressing, some of the systemic bias that we may have come across. So can we maybe move on to that next question of, what you may have done to address that bias that was spoken about?
Yeah, I'll bridge that a little bit. So to answer the previous question, then bridge it to this question, I think I see it as 3 parts, to our fellow panelists. That relationship building, that communication with your colleagues is very important. And at some point, it's been my experience that, you have to come to a point that if that's not working anymore, you also have to be firm and standing your ground. And I think that's very difficult for us to talk about. You can be collegial about your disagreements, but I like the quote that's attributed to James Baldwin: "We can disagree and still love each other, unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist," right? Then that's when we can, that's when you have to draw the line. And I think often when we talk about race relations and the tensions behind that, it's very easy to say, let's all just get along and love each other. But the fact of the matter is that these conversations are still very, very difficult for many reasons, for many people. We are a country with a deep-rooted history in racial hate. It is unfortunate, but we are also a country with a deep-rooted history of pushing to overcome that, because we have a sense of an American, pursuit of happiness and equality. And so we need to continuously strive for that. And that is the America that I live for. That is my country, the country where you continuously push and strive to really uphold the Constitution and those values. So you have to move forward with that. And I think, to bridge it, another important component of building trust is engaging community. Because when you engage community and there's other people within your residents, your constituents, your stakeholders, your business community, your non-for-profits, when all of these different partners are all pushing in the same direction, it comes about community building. And I feel that that's something that Trustee Shah Jahan and I have done in Hanover Park. I muted myself on accident again. Where did I lose?
You were mentioning Trustee Shah Jahan and yourself working in Hanover Park.
That is something that Trustee Shah Jahan and I have been able to do successfully. Community building. We have taken our Cultural Inclusion Diversity Committee and really been able. When it started, it was kind of rocky. We had a few years there where we tried different things. We tried a scholarship program that didn't work out very well. We tried some events that didn't work out well. We knew that we didn't want to only focus on the fun stuff, if you will, the food and art and dance type of things. We wanted to have substance to our events and our issues that we dealt with, and that was a really good point moving forward. We've had several stakeholder meetings, and we've had a series of discussions where we bring policy members to talk about the issues, to talk about the demographics, and I think that's been really successful in creating good rapport with a lot of government agencies. I feel that throughout the region, we're very well respected for the work that our committee has done. I will say, admittedly, sometimes it's a little bit of struggle internally. I'll have to be honest, because again, it's important to create brave space. It's been a struggle sometimes internally, but externally, a lot of agencies have taken what we've done and moved forward with it. So the success is in persistence and perseverance, and you have to stay resilient and keep pushing forward. Change doesn't happen overnight, and we're not going to be able to dismantle racism in a few weeks or in a couple of years, or just by one protest or by one policy. It really takes a very comprehensive outlook into the culture of your organization, into self-reflection, and then the evolution of community.
Thank you. Would the other panelists like to add to this question?
Can I add something really quick? But I'll let Trustee Asif go first.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll wait.
I was just going to make a really brief statement. You may see me looking around the room right now because there's a huge hornet in our boardroom. So just wanted to let everyone know that. I was just going to say that, when it comes to policymaking, I really like the business world, because the business world has, this concept of mutual benefit. And when we're making policy, when we're trying to benefit one group, we shouldn't do it in a way to the detriment of another group. Because this causes tension between groups, and this causes divisions, and it may cause hostility as well. So we're always looking for unity, and that's my style, a unity, happy solution where both parties benefit and one group's not benefiting to the detriment of the other. And we're all working together collaboratively and in a unified manner to be inclusive of everybody. So that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Trustee Asif.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. I talked about establishing a good working relationship with your colleagues when you first start serving, and how important it is and all that good stuff. But at the same time, sometimes we all have to be aware, for each of us, there's going to come an issue where there's going to be a line in the sand in our community, a neighboring community, whatever the case is. And the person committing an act that you find completely unacceptable and you can't work through and you can't resolve has to understand that your final position ultimately will be to see them removed from office through the democratic process. And you have to be ready, willing, and able to play that card should the need arise. And it gets messy, and but it has to be done if you feel strongly enough about what you're advocating for. We can't be afraid to do that if the need arises. Usually it doesn't arise, but once in a while issues come up that are just, positions are completely irreconcilable. So I guess what I'm saying is in interpersonal skills, you got to have the carrot and you got to have the stick.
So we apologize. There's a hornet in the boardroom and we're trying to whack the hornet. No. So this is us taking a stand against something that we feel very passionate about. Honestly,
as if you didn't need to worry about more during a pandemic, that you have to worry about hornets in the boardroom.
It's 2021. I mean, come on.
We will take it all.
Murder hornets, whatever.
Thank you.
Pandemic. It's all right.
Brave hero. Thank you for saving us all. Jason, thank you.
Would the other panelists, now that the hornet hopefully is dead, like to add to the
What
question?
was the question again? I think that might help center us again.
I think you're gonna have to say that this session was conducted without any harm to any animals.
I think we can rule that one safe and out.
Maybe.
I hope the hornet didn't have partisan affiliation.
Nonpartisan discussion here.
We were talking about building a framework and we were talking about building a structure, right? So we talked about things that have worked in the past out in Aurora, how you took something and you kind of scaled it out. That's, again, I'm going to come back to these conversations and these difficult discussions. Not having the right stakeholders at the table, having those conversations, having those grassroots discussions has been a problem in addressing systemic racism. And I'm going to continue to kind of bring this back into what it is that we're facing out here in Lisle. And majority of the DuPage community is having the right participants at the table to have that conversation. So not every issue, not every idea needs to have a broad panel of individuals attending and talking about things. But we do need to make sure that we analyze the issues. For example, for the race issue, for some of the criminal justice reform issues that we're having, we need to have all the participants available and having that conversation so we can talk about what it is that means as far as an implementation goes at the community level. So let me step back just a moment. And we've seen people on either side of this of the criminal justice reform, but at our level, at the community level, it's about implementation. Nobody's going to disagree with the fact that you need a body cam, right? No one's going to disagree with a lot of the other things that are on there. How do we govern, right? How do we put together the financial aspect of it? And how do we put together a plan in place to implement those to the rest of our police officers? So those are the conversations that I think we need to continue to have. And having those with our community at the grassroots level, that's what we have been doing at Unity Partnership from the very beginning. They have been involved with putting together that legislation. They've been involved with our police department, hearing from the police chiefs, and they're going to continue to do that. That kind of addressing the problem, right? Addressing the issue at hand is the framework that we seem to be missing. And having this panel here today and hearing from all of us, our communities are very much alike. They're very similar. So learning from one another is another thing that I think we need to continue to do.
I will add to that, in establishing a framework, it takes intentionality. And when you do something with intention, you have to invest your time, your energy, and your funding. So these are issues that require professional support. You can have conversations internally within colleagues. You can have, stakeholder meetings or grassroots meetings with residents and other stakeholders. But it also requires someone that understands how to bridge those gaps and how to have those conversations in an authentic and intentional way, to be able to really move forward. I've actually learned a lot through osmosis through my husband, who is an HR professional in diversity and inclusion in the corporate world. And so I've learned a lot from just, hearing him present and, seeing his work. And it requires professional investment and support. And that can mean hiring a consultant, that can mean hiring an individual. That's a direction in which people are moving towards, hiring someone that can really be responsible for guiding the elected officials. The fact of the matter is that as elected officials, we are not necessarily single issue experts. We are not specialists, and we're certainly not specialists in diversity and inclusion issues. That's just, there might be a few elected officials that perhaps that is part of their specialty, perhaps through their profession, but we need that support. So we have to really acknowledge that for ourselves. We are generalists and we require that professional support, and that needs to be an investment. There are several things that I've seen other agencies in moving forward. There are disparity studies, and those can help you in determining whether you have disparities in your hiring practices, disparities in your procurement and contracting. And these are all about, eliminating bias, and really they present a business case issue for you to eliminate bias. It's not just about, well, let's just, give someone who's unqualified a contract. Absolutely not. And we often hear that. That is a negative and misinformed notion on what equity means. There's also, equity indexes that you can establish so that you can determine, who's participating, how are constituents being impacted by different policies. And finally, there's an engagement of community. Who is engaging? Who's participating in your events? Who's participating in your board meetings? Who are you giving business opportunities to? How are you engaging people and creating opportunities? I want to give kudos to something that I've seen DuPage County do recently. Board member Hart and President Cronin have worked with Senator Karina Villa in addressing the issues of the pandemic when it comes to education, and they work with Dave Andalcio in providing technology and computers to community members that have a disproportionate impact when it comes to the pandemic and how it's impacted children, their economy, their access to be able to work remotely and go to school remotely. So these frameworks require investment and require intentionality.
Thank you so much to everyone. Charmaine, go ahead.
Oh, I would just like to add one more thing. Reaching out, and I completely understand this, with the social media world that we live in right now, the outreach is another further step to how it is that we can kind of build this framework and build this momentum kind of going forward. There are groups out there that are calling for diversity, that are calling for strong voices of color, of a different gender, or of gender inclusion, I guess, at this point. But at the very end, they start attacking the only individuals that are running for anything, or that are on a board, or they're serving for a particular purpose. So just having that framework and understanding will go a long way. But to actually support the leaders that are governing, like all of us here today, that will go an additional step further. Reaching out to Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, reaching out to all of you here at the DuPage County Board level, and getting that support so we can lay the framework for us going forward. And again, the other aspect of it is just the social media. Let's address those groups, let's address those biases that are out there that call for diversity and inclusion, but are not helping the leaders step into that role.
Thank you, Trustee Sadat. I think we're running out of time. I just wanted to real quick, thank DuPage County for giving us this platform, but also, push our county to work with our municipalities so that it becomes a priority for all of our municipalities. I think different municipalities are in different stages in terms of their progress in understanding why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. And so, within the region, within the county, I think it would be very beneficial for us to have a way to bridge those different places that we're at so that, we can truly, within our own communities, bring equity and inclusion. Diversity is a statistic, that's something you can't change, but equity and inclusion is intentional and it requires training, it requires effort and skills and things that, it just being of color does not satisfy those requirements. So I just wanted to end with that and also, thank all of you as our many of our county board members are on this call to give us this, this platform to share our personal experiences as those who are governing at the local level. And I'm hoping, we can continue this collaboration as municipal officials with our county officials.
Thank you so much, everybody. This was a very productive conversation. We do have 1 minute left in our meeting, and so I am going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here again. Very productive conversation. I want to quickly move over to old business. Is there any old business? All right. Is there any new business? Any public comment? Okay. No public comment for today. So I will call this meeting, well, not call this meeting, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right. Second, Rutledge. All right. Any questions or discussion on the adjournment? All right. Seeing none, hearing none. This meeting is adjourned.
I think we need to do a
Roll call. Let's get a roll call. That's right. We left last time.
Yes, I didn't catch who made the motion or
DeCiani.
moved. It was
DeCiani made the
DeCiani.
motion.
All right.
Second
Thank
by
you very much.
Rutledge.
Okay. Roll call to adjourn. Member DeCiani.
Aye.
Member Hart. Member LaPlante. Member Rutledge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Member Rutledge, aye. Member Tonatori. Aye. And Chair Covert.
Aye.
Aye. All ayes.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. If there's any follow-up questions, my email address is sadia.covert@dupageco.org. I'm happy to see you all, and hopefully we could continue this conversation. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here and spending your Tuesday morning, your valuable time at this committee. Thank you so much.